violent criminal reaction of the occupants in shooting at announced police officers emphasizes the extreme viciousness of the Black Panther Party. So does their refusal to cease firing at the police officers when urged to do so several times.
Ed Hanrahan, who was the political heir apparent of Mayor Daley, wanted to take credit for having killed this Black Panther leader. So he went on television, and he went on television explaining how Fred Hampton had come out of his bedroom firing a pistol, and how all the Panthers inside had repeatedly broken ceasefires and repeatedly fired at the police. The problem is when you fire a bullet, two things happen. You have a shell that comes from your gun, and you have a bullet that comes out the other end. When the evidence was all gathered, it turned out that all the shells that were found in the apartment came from police weapons, with the possible exception of one. All the bullet holes, the directions of those bullet holes, were all coming inside from outside. That is, showed that they were fired by the police. So that all of the evidence that Hanrahan said, all the evidence that was gathered proved that it was the police who fired, not the Panthers. Hanrahan went even further and actually pointed to places on the back door, which he said were evidence in pictures that the Panthers fired. The press themselves, when they looked closely at these pictures and returned to the scene, discovered that these were in fact nail heads and weren't bullet holes at all. The federal government at first appeared to be coming in and do a neutral investigation. And what the federal government did find, of course, was that it was the police and not the Panthers who had fired. Well, under their cover, though, the federal government, under the cover of appearing neutral, the federal government hid their own role, which was that it was their informant who had gotten a floor plan of the apartment, and their informant had given their floor plan to Ed Hanrahan's raiders.
I was supposed to be one of the murdered Panthers, okay? However, my plans changed that evening, and the informant, William O'Neill, was unaware of the change in plans that I had made. So my plans had changed, and I was not in the apartment. Oh, I was in the apartment early, but I left the apartment. And so I wasn't there. So they went to Plan 2 in order to get rid of me. They raided my apartment the next morning on December 5th, shot my door down, and they thought that I was in the apartment.
There had been a systematic effort by the FBI in Chicago and nationally to destroy the Panthers. Previously, the FBI in Chicago had sent a letter to the head of the El Rukns, Jeff Fort, telling him the Panthers were trying to assassinate him. Didn't he want to take some action to prevent that? They had deliberately attempted to provoke things between the Panthers and other groups and attempted to discredit the Panthers publicly.
They didn't have to kill every leader. All they had to do was kill one of the most important and up-and-coming and messianic leaders who was doing what Fred Hampton was doing, to send the message to all those young folks, whether they be black or white or Latin or whatever, who wanted to get involved in the struggle, that these are, this is the game that you're getting involved in. We'll kill you in your bed.
I think during different periods the government uses different tactics, you know, and sometimes their methods will be to publicly discredit groups, to jail people. We saw that sometimes with regard to the Wobblies. They actually did kill people. We saw with regard to the Communist Party, they frequently would jail people or attempt to ruin their reputations. I think with regard to the black movement in particular, the escalation of the government's attacks was very clear. And I think assassination, setting people up for internecine rivalries which could lead to deaths, I think the government has shown a willingness to use any form of violence that it felt was necessary.
What are we fighting for? The love of freedom cause, and we've got to win. Repression, in the air. Repression, everywhere. Repression, in the air.
The FBI itself, its structure, was one which was never, of course, happy with the struggle. The fact that Martin Luther King was, phones were tapped, and the problems that J. Edgar Hoover gave him was clear. We only put King out. We expected it from us and SNCC, but certainly King was not a flaming revolutionary calling for the destruction of America. He was a reformist, trying to, in fact, improve America, and was good for the image of America.
Within the FBI, who viewed itself as the vanguard of fighting, you know, communism and so forth, they were always afraid that civil rights and the thrust for voting rights and so forth was, quote, a communist plot.
You take Martin Luther King, that is being led by communists all over this great country, feels that he has the key to the White House. He has the telephone call to the White House that can get anything he wanted.
I spoke for the white people. The white people rallied behind it, and we kicked the living hell out of the niggers, sent the out-of-town niggers to the hospital and out of the state, put back to their own hometowns where they ought to have been, and the niggers in St. Augustine got quiet and went back over to Nigger Town where they belong.
Our feeling was that the FBI agent from the South was indistinguishable from his community.
The FBI had to work with the local law enforcements. That was their task. So it was clear here, first of all, they have comradeship from being in the same type of job, law enforcement agencies, and they were comrades from being in the South there together, not having too much work, joking together, and probably had social life together. And since the local police were the enemies, were our enemies, and the FBI was supposed to be our allies, it meant an automatic split between them, which never occurred.
Well, I've just gotten through a couple of weeks ago with a 45 or 46-day battle of Ingram Park, I call it. That's the park there in Birmingham where we stopped Martin Luther King. And I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we had that nigger whipped.